So let's talk a little bit about how to know or how to choose which of these measures of center and measures of spread we should use to discuss whatever we happen to be discussing. Let's take a look first at the measures of center. We've got the mean, median, and mode. Mean is the average, median is the one in the middle, and mode is the one that shows up most often. So suppose here we're looking at family sizes. We have a 3-person family, another 3-person family, another 3-person family, and a 10-person family. If we were going to be designing a car for this population, to try to sell to this population, what kind of car would we build? A car that would hold 3 people, a car that would hold 10 people, or a car that would hold the average of these together? If we had, 10 plus 3 plus 3, that's 19, divided by 4 would be 5. So the mean here would be 5, the median would be 3, and the mode would be 3. So here the mean would be kind of meaningless because nobody is going to want a 5-person car. It wouldn't suit anybody in the population. If we wanted to suit the most frequent members of the population, that would be the mode, that would be the right choice. If these were quiz scores and we wanted to calculate somebody's grade for whatever class this might be, then the average of those being 5 might be an appropriate measure to use. So there's no one answer as to which of these measures is the right one to use. That's why we have different measures, because they're useful in different situations. You might hear an awful lot when they talk about a population. They talk about a median income for the population instead of talking about a mean income, because when you have somebody that's far away from the mean, like this 10, that can change the calculation of the mean. Let me show you. If here the mean is 5, if I change this to 100, that's really going to change the mean a lot, but it doesn't really change the characteristic of this population. Most of the people in this population still are at 3, be that an income or a number of kids or whatever. But changing this to 100 actually changes the mean to about 25. So if you're trying to describe this population, you wouldn't want to say the average typical household has 25 people in it. You'd want to stick with the median or the mode. We call that characteristic, I didn't write that here, we call that resistance. If we change a number like this and it affects one of these measures a great deal, that is not resistant. The mean here is not resistant to outliers. The median and the mode are resistant, because if I change this from 10 to 100, both the mode and the median are unaffected. They're resistant to that change. We want to look at our measures of spread. We talked about the range, the interquartile range, and the standard deviation. We have the same sort of situation there. I've got a population, say, oversimplified, I know there's only 5 families in this population. These guys all make $50,000 a year, and this one person makes $10 million a year. Again, for the measure of center, if we want to talk about typical, we're definitely going to go with the mean, the median, or the mode. But if we want to talk about how diverse is this population, is this really a terribly diverse population? It's not really spread out. We don't have a lot of poor people, a lot of rich people. What we really have is a whole bunch of people that are all almost exactly the same. And then we get this one rich guy lives up in his mansion on the hill. But does he really affect, or she, the character of this population? The population's still pretty consistent. It's not really spread out. Now, if we look at the range here, we would be subtracting 100 million minus 50,000, and that would make it look like the population was all over the place. So that would be a bad measure to use for the spread here. The interquartile range, we're only looking at the middle half of the population. Again, this is a real oversimplification. We only have a few here, but when we look at the range, we're looking at how spread out is the whole population. If we look at the interquartile range, then we're going to see that middle is not very spread out at all. So that would be a good measure for that. The standard deviation is going to be somewhere in between. Not numerically, but in appropriateness for this situation. This outlier is really going to affect the standard deviation, but it's not going to affect it as much as the range is affected. So when we talk about resistance to the outliers, and again, an outlier is just something that lays way outside of the data. 100's an outlier here, 100 million's an outlier here. It has a tremendous effect on the range, so the range is not resistant. The interquartile range is very resistant, and the standard deviation is somewhat resistant. In any given situation, you need to determine which one of these is going to give you the actual information you want. Do we want to know the average of these to calculate a grade, or do we want to know which one's more typical because we want to target something to that particular type of person, family, or whatever? Think about the example of maybe what your favorite kind of fast food is. If we have a bunch of people who like Chinese and a bunch of people who like Mexican, we're not going to average those together trying to do some kind of mean, right? We're going to take them all. We're going to say Chinese showed up a lot, Mexican showed up a lot. If I want to know what kind of restaurant to open in this neighborhood, I'm going to go with one of those that were the mode. Hope that makes sense.